Hello everyone, I'm still working on my next proper video, but I thought that while I'm still doing that, I would record something that I used to like listening to from other ASM artists, which is a whisper ramble. And I thought that I would make it about some characters of mine. So, to start with, I shall take you back to my early childhood, when I was actually afraid of dragons. See, when I was very little, dragons in cartoons and things were always these giant monsters that breathed fire and could eat someone up in one gulp. And that was terrifying to me. I mean, it still is, really. But there were a few exceptions. There was a cartoon. It was really a cutout animation thing by Oliver Postgate and Peter Firmin. It was called Ivor the Engine, and it was about this little train called Ivor and his driver, Mr. Jones, and it was set in Wales. And there was one episode where Jones finds a dragon egg, and it hatches into this little friendly Welsh dragon who, accidentally causes a few fires, but is, for the most part, a very friendly little chap. But of course, that was a little baby dragon, and the big dragons were still quite scary to me. But then there was this series on the BBC. It was part of the Look and Read sort of educational series, and it was a story called Through the Dragon's Eye. It was done over several parts or chapters, and it starts off with this mural, and these three children are painting this mural. I think their names were Amanda, Scott and Jenny, and they're painting this dragon, and Jenny paints in the eye, and the dragon comes to life, and they are able to walk into the mural, and they go on this whole magical adventure. Now, the dragon, who was called Gorwen, he was actually quite scary looking, probably mostly because of the terrible rubber suit that the actor was wearing, but he was a friendly dragon. He was very noble and wise, and it made me think of dragons in a little bit of a different light. And he actually had a power where he could breathe his smoke on things, and it would sort of rejuvenate their life. And then there was one more sort of dragon story that helped me sort of see dragons in a bit of a different light, and there was another little cutout cartoon called Mr. Ben, which was about this sort of very ordinary businessman, banker, something like that, who he used to go to this costume shop, and it was a magical costume shop. So in the very first episode, he goes in and he puts on a suit of armour, and he notices there's a door in the back of the changing room, and it leads him through to medieval England, and there's a dragon sitting on a rock, and there's smoke rising out of his nostrils, and at first Mr. Ben thinks this is somebody else wearing a costume, but it turns out to be a real dragon, and he's very sad because there's a matchmaker who has framed him for starting fires that weren't his fault, so that people will buy more matches and they won't ask the dragon to light their fires. So Mr. Ben has to help him to prove his innocence. And so, inspired by all of these dragons, I sort of had this in mind when we were given this little class activity to make up a story to go with some little illustrations we were given on a photocopied printout, like they used to do. And there was a knight, and there was a dragon, and there was a giant, and there was a few other things. And instead of having the knight fight the dragon, I decided to have the knight make friends with the dragon, and then they could go on an adventure together. And I think a little while later we had another class activity where we had to write a story based around an island, and I thought, well, let's take this friendly dragon that I've come up with and let's give him a name and you know, make it so it's Dragon Island. And that was when I gave him the name Duncan. And my mother found a very old drawing that I had done of Duncan when I was about 6, I think, or 7. Might have been 7. I think it was 7. And you know, he's just this cheerful little green fellow. Looks a bit like a crocodile with wings more than a dragon, but and he's got these little ears, and I think they were based on a dragon-shaped pencil sharpener my mother had. So the Duncan who is in the videos of the Dragon Diner, the cafe, is based on this character I created when I was about 6 or 7, who I saw as just sort of being a friendly, helpful kind of character. He wasn't exactly an imaginary friend, but he was a character that I used to draw a lot, and most of those drawings are probably stuck in a drawer somewhere in my parents' house, or they might have got lost, I'm not sure, but they might be in the attic. They do save a lot of stuff like that, but you know, they're children's drawings, you know, they're kids' drawings, they're not really very much, but I used to draw him a lot. I used to draw him as a superhero and draw him as like a sort of cartoon character, like sort of Bugs Bunny style. I think his ears got sort of progressively longer at one point, and I'd come up with a whole sort of family for him where he had an evil brother and a younger brother who was his sidekick and a girlfriend, and you know, all the usual sort of cartoon staples. But as I got older, I sort of forgot about him, you know, and my attention turned to things like superheroes and that sort of thing, and I started drawing characters like I drew this sort of Iron Man inspired character called Cyber Kid, and this lightning superhero called Thunderessa, and an ice cyborg whose name was Iceborg, which was a terrible pun, you know, and things like that, you know, and I started doing comics like that, and I had a few characters who were just superheroes, and then I started getting into sci-fi and started doing like a space adventure comic that was very poorly drawn, and I don't think I have any of it anymore, but I do have a few pictures of some of the characters. There was sort of an elemental power system going through it where one of the characters was sort of geo-telekinetic, like she could move Earth, and another one could do lightning, and another one could do fire, and another one could do ice, and all these sorts of things. And I think I probably continued with those for a while, until I was in college, and I just sort of I was in college, and I had just started up an online account on the Rooster Teeth Red vs. Blue website, and there were some artists on there, and one of them drew a lot of dragons, and it reminded me of the dragons I used to draw, and I started to want to draw dragons again, and so I just did a few little sketches here and there, and I started to come up with a story where I had this idea of a girl who discovers that she's part dragon and she turns into a dragon, and sort of her friend has to help her with trying to hide it from people and all that sort of thing. And I'd been reading some books about mythology and stuff, and how in Asian culture you have the shape-shifting dragons, and I'd also been introduced to Dungeons and Dragons sort of through the game Neverwinter Nights, and the fact that there was a deeper lore there. I never got to actually play Dungeons and Dragons when I was in college, but there was a few friends I had who told me about some of like the lore of it, and the fact that you had dragons who could shapeshift and turn into people. So I went with the idea of, a person who is part dragon and turns into one. And I sort of abandoned that as well. I feel like it probably would have been a little bit too close to things like Jake Long American Dragon, which is a good cartoon. If you get the chance, you should watch that. But then I started to think about other sort of ways I could try and write a story about dragons. I'd seen on DeviantArt this little story of somebody just sort of encountering a dragon in the woods, and I decided to try and do my own spin on it. And so I took this character who was originally going to be start off human and turn into a dragon. I thought, what if she's stuck between a human and a dragon form? And I was sort of starting to experiment with drawing anthro, furry style characters, so I thought this could be quite a good in-lore reason for a humanoid dragon character. She's stuck between human and dragon states. And this became Helen, who is another of my older characters, and I will get onto how that changed in a little bit. I started to write a story about her and this boy called Heath, who discovers her and finds out, that she's been living with this old man in the forest who's adopted her, and she doesn't really know where she comes from. And I was trying to think of how he could help her to try and find out where she comes from, but I sort of lost thread with the story. And around that time, I also started to try and join some groups, because I joined DeviantArt, as I said, and they had just introduced groups, which were things you could join up to a group and share your art, and then people who were interested in the same thing could see art from lots of different artists. And one of them, which was the Dragons Rule Club, were doing a competition to make their mascot. And I designed this little guy called Roy, who was an urban dragon who because I thought Dragons Rule Club, that sounds like something you'd see spray painted on the wall, So I did this thing where he was this little urban dragon, and he'd spray painted the logo on the wall in the city. I did this graffiti style logo. And I won the contest. Roy became the mascot, and I started doing little comics of Roy and his friends answering questions from people that they'd left in the group journal, right? Because that was the thing you could do. And I got sort of added onto the group staff by Geldroth, who was the group owner at the time. He now goes by Zai, I think. But anyway, I started to do these little comics where Roy answered questions from people, and I added new characters. I added Trev, who was his friend, who was very enthusiastic. Roy was a bit sarcastic and sort of, had a bit of attitude, but Trev was a lot more sort of friendly and outgoing and excited about everything. And I also wanted to balance out the three with a character who could answer more like scientific questions or something like that. And I called her Anna, and she was this blue dragon who was going to be like the smart one of the group. And because I'd started drawing these characters in this particular style, I was going for sort of not quite anthro, more like cartoon. So they looked like, they could walk on all fours if they wanted to, but they were standing upright because they happened to be sort of like cartoony characters. I found some old pictures of Duncan, and I decided to redraw Duncan in this urban dragon style. And he looked really good in it, he fit into that world really well. And I thought, well, I should probably add in other characters, and I looked at this story that wasn't going anywhere, and I thought, well, what if I redesigned Helen so she's not this more humanoid dragon anymore. She's like one of these cartoony dragons, and she looks like she fits into this world. And I thought, then I have to sacrifice the idea of her being a shapeshifter. So I ummed and ahed about it a bit. But at Halloween, I drew Duncan and Helen together in a picture, and people really liked the idea of them being together as a couple, and I realised that I really liked that idea as well. And so I thought, well, this made me really want to add Helen to that world of urban dragons, and so I redesigned her completely. I made her I actually had a few goes at doing this. The first go, she looks a bit more sort of Western, and then I tried to design her a little bit more noodly, because I didn't want the reason that she had hair to be because she was a girl. I wanted it to be because she was like part Eastern dragon, because they often have manes of hair. So I decided to make her a little bit more noodly, but then that sort of lost a little bit of her like weight, and I had a few more goes at redesigning her before I settled on a design that I liked. But then, just as I was sort of getting into drawing these characters, and I was ready to start making some proper comics, and I was bringing back other characters of mine, like I decided to bring back the character of Heath as being the nephew of Helen's adopted father, so that made him like her cousin. And I wanted to bring back Owen and Nadine, who were the characters from the story that I originally was writing about, a girl who finds out she can turn into a dragon, except now she doesn't. She's just interested in dragons. But just as I was sort of wanting to get all these things together, I kind of just had a bit of a tough time in my life, and I fell into a bit of depression, and I just didn't draw for a few years. I burnt myself out, really, and from sort of late 2013, I just didn't draw at all. I was working a lot more, and I was putting a lot of my energy into my work, and there was some stuff going on. My grandparents were starting to get in ill health, and so, we were having to look after them more, and with all the running around and stuff, I just didn't get time to really put time into drawing, and so it all sort of fell by the wayside until about, in 2016 I was trying to sort of get back to drawing, but it wasn't until sort of like 2017, 2018 that I started to really sort of try and get time to practice again, and I started to try and once again take these old characters and redesign them to fit how I was drawing now, and maybe fix a few things that I didn't like about their old designs and try and improve a few things. And it was tough because I hadn't drawn at all for a couple of years there. It was tough relearning the basics of drawing, especially these characters that I knew that I could draw, but like had just kind of forgotten how to draw. But yeah, so the current sort of designs for Helen and Duncan and Roy and Trev and Anna, I have kind of tried to gradually get back, to a feeling where they feel right again. And I'm still not quite there, to be honest, because I've had another rough couple of years with my parents' health being as it is, and a few other sort of situations in the family which I won't go into. But yeah, it's been nice to get back to drawing them though, and it's nice to feel like those characters are back again. But in the time that I've been kind of absent from the internet, I feel like a lot has changed. Back when I joined DeviantArt, it was a thriving community, and there were some strange parts of it. We all knew there was dodgy stuff there, but it felt like there were people who cared about art, and it felt like gradually that community has sort of fallen away, and people that I used to be friends with there have left, and there are a few people who I keep in contact with, but we've all got our own lives and got our own ways, and we all work full time. We don't always have time to properly, talk and catch up and stuff. And the internet has changed. I joined Twitter, and then that got taken over, and now everything is behind a paywall. And I tried Instagram, but I don't really like how that works, and I've just felt like I haven't found a new home on the internet. And I was pleasantly surprised when I gathered a bit of an audience here, because I really wasn't expecting it. I just sort of threw a video up and thought, I'll give it a go. And I think I burnt myself out trying to make a whole bunch of stuff when I had other things going on that really were taking out my time there as well. But I think I'm going to try and just go at my own pace now and make stuff when I'm ready to make it. So yeah, that's sort of the story of how I came to like dragons, and how I created some of my dragon characters in the first place. And there are a few other characters that sort of I've made and then kind of forgotten about, who I should probably try and bring back in that same style. There are a few other dragon characters who I want to try and redesign and include in this sort of Urban Dragons world, and I'd like to give them all a voice. I'd like to try and get a few friends together to see who wants to voice what characters, and maybe I'll write some role plays for them, or maybe I'll start doing comics again. I'll just have to see how it goes. And of course, over that time, I've also evolved how my persona looks, because you may have noticed that I draw myself as a dragon now, and I didn't used to. And there's a bit of a long story there, but back when I was on the Rooster Teeth community, I was trying to sort of find a persona, because I'd started to get into the furry community, but I didn't quite feel like I fit in yet, and I felt like the thing I needed to fit in was a persona. And I liked dragons. I thought, what about a dragon? And I tried a green dragon, and I tried a red dragon, and none of them quite fit. And I was trying to get it right, but then I had this argument with this guy there who also sort of depicted himself as a dragon, and was basically, it was when How to Train Your Dragon came out, and he got really annoyed about it. I won't go into details, but it put me off kind of having a dragon persona for a long time. I drew myself as a lion for a while, and that didn't really stick. And then it was only a few years ago that my partner actually sort of helped me with feeling a bit more confident about drawing myself as a dragon again. I'd drawn this Valentine's Day card of us all as dragons, and it made me want to redesign my persona as a dragon, and so I used the same colours as the lion, which is why my dragon is kind of that sandy yellow colour. And the brown mane is basically like my brown hair. In many ways, I kind of took some design elements from Helen, the mane, the sort of mixture of Eastern and Western characteristics, and I'm quite happy. This feels like a comfortable kind of version of me now, and it's a long time down the line, but I finally felt like I had a representation of me that I could, say this is me. But unfortunately, I kind of feel like I don't really have a place to be furry and sort of interact with more people of the community. But I do have a few friends who I share that interest with, so I'm going to do that here and there. But yeah, so that's the story of my dragon characters and my dragon persona, and I just thought that would make a nice little whisper ramble that I could stick on to fill the gap between now and when I finish my next couple of videos, which I'm going to be editing together hopefully soonish, but I'm not going to rush myself. I don't want to push myself too hard and get burnt out again. Anyway, I better wrap this up now. It's been a long one now, and I'll probably have to edit it down a bit, but I hope that you enjoy just kind of listening to me ramble in the background. Maybe you can just be listening to this as you start to doze off. It's just a sort of monotone kind of ramble. Really, I could have been talking about anything, but anyway, I don't really know how to end this now. I suppose by saying that I do intend to bring back Duncan again, and I have a couple of ideas for Graithmere. And I did notice, now, I watched the He-Man cartoon that's been out on Netflix recently, and they had a character who was called Granomere, and I thought, okay, that's a bit of a weird coincidence. I don't remember that character from when it was on when I was a kid, but there we have it. There's a character who has almost the same name as Graithmere, but just one of those weird coincidences. But anyway, yeah, I should wrap this up, and I hope that you are feeling a little bit more rested from listening to me just waffle on. I hope that I'm not being too boring doing this. I promise that I will have some more proper videos with characters on the way. Some for Duncan, some for Graithmere. I have one for Veril the Naga. And there's a few other characters I want to introduce. I just need to find the right voice for them and finish their scripts. Anyway, I'll wrap things up here, and I hope that you all have a good day, or a good night, or whatever time it is for you. Thanks for listening, if you did make it to the end, and bye for now.